Juliet Lowe Elementary was almost all white when David Paddison was entering second grade. Gadsden Elementary was almost all black. The desegregation plan of that era sent young Paddison to Gadsden, and he went.
He stood on the corner and waited for the school bus.
Me being 7 years old when all of this, strife and craziness was going on the outside, I was in this peaceful, inclusive, diverse environment, and I didn't know any better, and I think that prepared me for what the world is today better than any education you could ever imagine.
A lot of people in Bob's class, social class, took their kids out of the public schools and started sending them to the private schools that sprung up after desegregation was mandated.
I said, why didn't you put me in one of the private schools? And he says, well, as a business leader, one of the things that's very important in the community is the public school system. And it's very hard to be critical of the public school system if you're not willing to put your own children in.
Favorite people was my boss at Savannah Bank and Trust, Malcolm Bell.
Mr. Paddison formed his community sense in part at Savannah Bank, where he was head of retail banking, working under mentors Malcolm Bell and Reuben Clark. But make no mistake, his North Star is wife Philippa.
This was a drawing that she made of Philippa teaching a child. And if there's one thing that is very special about Philippa, she's always teaching a child.
The Paddisons are lifelong members of the Unitarian Universalist Church on Troop Square, a church that stood in the breach as Savannah navigated the treacherous racial waters of the 60s and 70s. Bob was key to securing a UU loan to establish the Academy of Black Culture.
This community was very, very tense, and people were going into their respective corners, and people like Bob and the Unitarians and some of the Episcopalians stood in the middle.
It was high risk from a business standpoint, but we all know it was the right thing to do.
And then there was the matter of financing a suitable car for an up-and-coming PhD and future mayor.
He was one of the few whites in the banking area in the city that would make loans to blacks.
He was really active, and he was trying to help the Savannah community out through his position.
It was no doubt that I made every one of those payments on time because I wanted him to know that his trust in me was justified.
Meanwhile, David had fallen under the spell of premier cyclist Nestor DeRenne. But to keep up with the Savannah wheelman would require thousands in equipment.
So I think my limit was like 350 or something.
There was never the notion that you were going to be getting anything that wasn't earned.
A new M&M supermarket offered the solution.
It was 40,000 square feet grocery store, and David and one other of his friends would report to work at 4 in the morning and wax that 40,000 square foot store. And after he did that, he would get on his bike and take a 50-mile ride.
If you don't have the training in, you get embarrassed, you get left in the dust. And there's nothing I hate worse than being left in the dust.
Few could keep up with the Jenkins High Jr. as he and the family competed at the highest levels.
My job was, when he came by, was to take a bucket of water and throw it on him. And so the first time he came by, he got right in front of me and I threw it on him and he hollered, "The head, not the crotch."
It didn't take me long to learn not to ride a skinny-tired bike on rocks.
David's given up cycling and says he doesn't really have a sports thing anymore. He just tries to play along in everybody else's.
Jim Mercer, who's fishing is his thing. I mean, he is a yard long and a mile deep on fishing. He called me and said, look, we need to go to Belize. We need to go this time because the moon's right and we're going to catch this is where we're going to catch a big permit. And I said, Jim, I want to go, but I can't go those days. He called David. David said, sure. Now, so here Jim is, and he's been studying up, he's been practicing. David didn't do anything but get on the plane, borrowed his equipment from Jim. They spent a week down there on an island, remote island. Luckily it had internet at night because David would have gone crazy. They caught 2 fish. Jim caught one, David caught one. Guess who caught the biggest one?
I had 27 good years and two years that weren't so good.
After a 27-year career, Savannah Bank was acquired by First Union. Mr. Paddison retired 2 years later. Well, sort of.
That's kind of a meaningful picture. That's the product right there.
That was when DeRenne Middle School came knocking.
Every day was joyful. And people would say, what's your goal? And I said, my goal is to never get mad at a student.
He taught photography at DeRenne for another 29 years. Actually, he wasn't teaching photography at all.
Parents thought that he was a paid staff person, couldn't get over the fact that it was a retired man who had dedicated his retirement life to helping students. And he just gave the kids such a positive outlook because of his demeanor and his confidence that the confidence that he gave to the students about what they could accomplish through photography and how they saw things in a different light.
Like father, like son, David had spent his adult life working at Palmer & Kay Insurance. But when Palmer & Kay was acquired by Wachovia, it was a game changer.
I had to make this decision. If I'm not going to work here 5 years, and I'm 40, if I'm going to do something, I better do it now.
I remember getting the call from him the day that he and the other 6 founders of Seacrest Partners walked out to start the firm. And I remember thinking how incredibly brave that was, because I knew that all of them were at the top of their game at that point. And to walk away from what I knew was a great living to start something new was just something that kind of blew me away.
News of the exodus rippled through the community, and the excitement of Seacrest filled the air. Then reality set in.
I had no idea that what I was about to embark on was going to be the most difficult thing I'd ever seen. I didn't sleep for 6 months. I didn't eat for 6 months. It was so stressful just trying to start a business from scratch. I mean, how about this? You don't have any customers. Try that one on for size. And you've got 8 employees.
He stopped working out, he gained a little weight. You could see the stress on him. It was a tough period.
One aspect of Seacrest was unique: their open arms embrace of virtually every charitable organization in the community. That was something Wachovia couldn't do from Atlanta.
His personality is one of being a connector. He likes connecting people to opportunities. He likes being the strategic thinker that makes things happen. And it's worked well for his business and for his community.
Seacrest led not just with contributions, but also by encouraging participation from all Seacresters in community events.
He leads his people to reach the right conclusion on their own, and he empowers people. He's a great delegator, and he empowers people to rise up to their level.
What made him successful is he picked the right team members, and he understood that relationships really matter.
You are confident that if you don't do everything exactly right, everybody around you will help you make it right.
The strategy paid off, and now Seacrest stands alongside Savannah's great companies.
So we're 11 years in, and the little firm that started with 7 people who quit their comfortable jobs and got uncomfortable very quickly, we have stayed with our mission, which is to earn the right to be a trusted advisor to our clients on all matters of risk. And we're consummating a true merger with some friends of ours in Atlanta that will make Seacrest Partners the largest independent insurance agency in the state of Georgia.
With business success came leadership responsibilities. Paddison has become a close advisor to one of Savannah's most influential elected officials.
He tells the story that when he saw that he couldn't talk me out of it, he thought he better support me. So he's been a great advisor and a great friend during this journey.
The Paddison home on Wilmington Island is as unique as the Paddisons. Wife Jeannie is an animal rescuer who lives her work. Piggy Sue is just one of hundreds of Jeannie's stories.
And this green truck, the door went open, a white, looking garbage bag went flying out, and when I finally got up to it, I was like, that's not a garbage bag, that's a baby pig. And so I just stopped and rescued her.
Out of a truck to, constant attention from Ellie Mae Clampett. 20,000 bees.
David has his own area of expertise. He's the family beekeeper, which he approaches philosophically.
Kind of the bees are one of my favorite analogies of life. They just do their thing, they work tirelessly, and you give them long enough and they'll create just magic. Watch the treats in the yard.
Yeah. But mostly, he's the comedian and custodian for the little farm on Waltower Road.
Some people having the Midas touch. We have the reverse Midas touch. We take gold and turn it into manure. I'm all over the place doing stuff, working, volunteering, whatever. Then I got to come home and take care of all her stuff. I mean, between rebuilding four-wheelers and, manure spreaders and fixing fences and all.
Automatic waterers.
Yeah, so in order to be with Jeannie, you got to have a lot of handy skills to keep everything working, because when something breaks, there's it's a problem.
Yes, constant upkeep.
And can he do that?
Absolutely. I was very impressed with him when I first went to his house, and he was underneath an old Bronco. What year was it?
1970 Bronco.
And I asked him what he was doing, and he basically was taking the engine apart and putting it back together. And I was very impressed.
Impressed along with the entire city at the efforts of the Paddisons. And really, we're talking about all the Paddisons, who have helped Savannah become more open-minded, kinder, and more generous.
I would always go into the principal's office. I said, I have to tell you about this man who has devoted his life to our students.
They've always been people of courage to stand for the right thing and not worry about the popularity of it.
They just involve people that love this town. And
you can't have a meeting with the David's in without him coming up with 4 or 5 pearls of wisdom. You said, where in the hell did that come from?
David is a giver. He is generous with his time and his resources. He cares about the community. He cares about the quality of life in the community.
And he's devoted his entire life to making Savannah a better place. And we're fortunate to have him. And he's young enough. We'll be reaping the rewards of David's activity at Seacrest, at CETA, at Union Mission, really for another generation.
He's married to Mrs. Doolittle, Jeannie, and with fair disclosure here, I like David a lot, but I like his wife a lot better.
Philippa said if he'd been first, we might not have had any more children.
Bob and David Paddison are laureates in the Junior Achievement Savannah Business Hall of Fame.
Good news is there's a bright light out there and you can't see anybody, so it's like talking to yourself.
Well, our family is a lover of music, and many times we think that music will solve problems for all of us. So, I love the North, I love the South, I love the East, and I love the West. But most of all, I love being here with you. I love being with my son David. He makes life very interesting. With my friends and family. As Louis Armstrong would say, it's a wonderful world. And I don't know, been chosen to live long and to enjoy life and be in a wonderful house with a wonderful family. The wonderful world brought many amazing mentors. The wonderful brought many and colleagues into David's and my lives. These overlapping and interconnected relationships have been made working for Savannah a community, a wonderful journey. And I just can't tell you how wonderful it is. And I must admit a lot of luck was involved, but the luck came along and I accepted it. And we just ended up enjoying what's here, and it's wonderful. Thank you, and bon voyage.
All right. So, in that video, I said the most terrifying thing I'd ever done was start a new business with a great group of friends with no clients. I was wrong. It was winning an award with my father and turning my life over to Craig Harney, who knows where that was going. I mean, there was a lot of material, and I'm usually pretty good at coming up with a lot of different things and confusing people, and they can't really ever remember what it is I said. So I'm really paranoid when I got a video camera in my face, right? So that makes it interesting. So I am glad that Craig won his award before he risked his own career reporting on mine. So that was well played, Craig. This was an interesting exercise, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be recognized with my father here in front of all of our friends and colleagues and business partners and community volunteers, and also for it to be on behalf of junior achievement. One of the things that our family believes very deeply in is that education is the one truly liberating thing that you can use to rise above whatever circumstances, to solve any problem, to gain any height. And the second component of that is the close partnership that you find with a business community. So if you can be in an environment where you've got great educational opportunities and you've got a great nurturing business community, and those two can work together, it creates role models, it creates prosperity, it creates a sense of hope for these children that Dr. Lockamy was talking about. And I'd never heard it put that way, that the children are the sponges, and it's our job to kind of get out of the way, get out of our own way, and make room for them. And I think that's the thing that really happened in our family. That I grew up as the son of Bob Paddison. You can't imagine in Savannah growing up here. He moved here in 1929, lived here. He knew everybody. He was a banker. He came back and worked at the bank from the late 50s. I came back into town in the mid 80s, and everywhere I went, when I said my name and it's spelled a little bit different, everybody would say, "Oh, is Bob your father?" I mean, that's, everywhere, like everywhere I went. And it's been great, now that he's 94 and he's been retired for 30 years, everywhere he goes, they say, "Oh, is David your son?" So I'm like, gotcha. So anyway, that's been an interesting kind of thing. That's, payback's hell, but anyway. So the thing that I thought made it very interesting was how different we were. Like to be awarded or recognized at the same time, but also be very different. And in order for a father and son to kind of make it on the stage at the same time, two things had to happen, which are kind of unusual. One is the older member had to be kind of low profile. So the one thing my dad was famous for was being not famous. Like he did all this work and all this stuff, and he didn't want any credit, he didn't want his name anywhere. And so maybe it took a longer time for him to get recognized than he probably deserved, right? I mean, you know, he's doing great things. I mean, everybody in this room has probably touched someone or something that he was involved in. Then you got me, right? What am I doing? I've got friends in this audience that are sitting there rolling their eyes going, you know, I just saw those people on the screen up here, and now he's up there. There's something really, really wrong here. I got a lot of eyes rolling going on. But, you know, so I had to have a personality a little bigger than probably was appropriate or necessary in order to get on the same stage as him. So you had a guy under the radar and over the radar. And I'm beginning to think under's better, just so you know. So the other thing that you have to have, you know, to kind of win the award simultaneously is what I call a connector. And so you had to have somebody in your life that might have worked with your father and might have also worked with you. And so I look at Don Waters, who's one of my very dearest friend and great mentor and hunting buddy, who also worked with my father. Same building, same time, and knew about what he had done and what was going on. And so you also have these multi-generational families in Savannah, like the Tenenbaums and Kronowitzes, the Colemans, and these were all people that he worked with in volunteer capacity. Many of them were his clients, and in the same sense, I'm working with many of them and their sons and their businesses. So there's that kind of passing of the, you know, the connector. So there's this upstream and downstream relationship. The third thing is a shared belief, and like I said before, in the power of things like junior achievement, which bring the community together, both from an education standpoint and a business standpoint, and look to creating the future for our children. Because if we're not in the business of doing that, we're out of business, right? I mean, that's where it all happens. The last thing I'm going to talk about is what I call the supporting cast. And when I think about my father and his supporting cast, and I think about me and my supporting cast, I think about my mother, his wife Philippa. I mean, he never had to concern himself with anything he ever did, because she was always going to be there to back him up, to dust him off, to put him back in the game. And I had the same great fortune to marry Jeannie, who I had no idea at the time was going to be this amazing rock of a person who, when I kind of figured that we'd started this company and I didn't quite do the math right, that I had a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old, in about 5 years I was going to spend a lot of money on college, and our company was brand new. I mean, that's pretty scary. And I looked at her one night and I said, I think I might have screwed up. She goes, hey, you'll be fine. If we got to sacrifice and we got to do whatever, should you just go back in, you take care of your people, you take care of your clients, we'll be fine, don't worry about us. And you can't imagine how powerful that is if you know that no matter what you do, what risk you take, or what thing you try to do, that if it doesn't work out, you've got a strong person right in your house that's going to dust you off, put you back in the game. So it's very fortunate that we both had great, strong women in our life that really supported us. And now, Jeannie, Ellie Mae Clampett, has started her own deal, which is called the Savannah Wildlife Rescue Center, and she has got a 501c nonprofit with 50-some volunteers, and she's rescuing orphan baby wildlife, mammals primarily. So she's taking care of a whole different segment of our population in the community, and so she doesn't like to hear what I have to say necessarily, but I usually tell somebody else and let them tell her, and that seems to work out a lot better. So, you know, coming home to each other every night, there's a lot of advice is not taken. So we're very fortunate to be here tonight with our friends and our family and our fellow business partners. And the last thing I want to talk about is the great team. 6 of the 7 of the original Seacrests are here, and the only one that's not here is Cindy Robinette, who was supposed to be here, but she had a big client meeting in Rome, Georgia, and the only way she could get there was to leave after a meeting today she had at 5 o'clock. And so she came up to me this morning and says, I don't think I can make it. I said, you're going on a client meeting? Now, you ain't got to be here. Go to the money. So I want to recognize her for driving 6 hours, you know, to kind of do that, and thank everybody else. We had a very interesting time starting this business. We've got Steve Eagle here, and we've got Kevin and Alan and Debbie and Michael, and so it's just great to have not only your family that has your back, but also your business partners that have your back. And so I just want to thank everyone for the honor tonight, and appreciate you recognizing me and my father together. That was very special.